So ESPN reports that Trae Young's disappointed with the Hawks' latest move, which is obvious with his passive-aggressive tweets, which Trae loves. There's the cryptic hourglass emoji, a Trae classic. But what is this all about? Well, the Hawks sent Trae a little message of their own, kind of thing you almost never see with a franchise player. They offered no max extension. Yep, despite him potentially being a free agent next year, they're just gonna roll the dice with that. Oh, he could leave, but they'll take the chance. Why? Well, if history tells us anything, this could be the first step to a shocking trade to a team you would never expect, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why this changes everything for Trae. But one example of this is Jimmy Butler. Remember, he was up for a max extension a year after taking the Heat to the finals, but Pat Riley said no, he's gonna have to show us more. And at the time we said, oh, this could mean a trade, people doubted it. But a year later, he is on Golden State. And all Trae is asking for here is the exact same contract De'Aaron Fox just got from the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio paid Fox without hesitation, despite them already having Steph Castle and Dylan Harper at his position. Fox isn't even their number one player. Trae can't get that from Atlanta. Trae is Atlanta, face of the franchise, so this is a huge deal. But not only does Trae do the cryptic tweet leaked to ESPN that he's disappointed, but a football player demanded a trade in the NFL. Trae said, this is why you pay the man early. When someone will take less early to stay in a place they wanted to be forever, you do it. Price only goes up now. Get what you deserve, bro. Basically saying, if you don't pay me, Hawks, it's gonna get real bad. So why is Atlanta even doing this? But you know those prompts that allow you to opt out of cookies? I love cookies, but despite that, my personal data can still be sold by data brokers. Literally anyone can buy your personal details, but you got a right to stay private and protect that personal data, which is where today's sponsor Delete Me comes in. One example is these phishing scams where somebody steals your identity by tricking you into clicking on a link. In fact, the median loss of fraud cases like that, 2 victims, comes out to $500, which is why I personally trust Delete Me to keep my info away from those kind of people who want to steal my identity or scam me. All I had to do was sign up to Delete Me, provide my info, and I told them to crush every single data broker. I don't want any of them. Then Delete Me gets started right away. It's easy and effective to remove your personal information from the web. So go to joindeleteme.com/AMHoops or use code AMHoops for 20% off. Well, to really understand, you have to step in their shoes, which is where it gets really complicated. Trae puts up insane numbers on offense, consistently leads the NBA in assists, a top scorer. But the bottom line is winning. The whole point to all those numbers is, do you win? And the answer is no. Like the Lakers just signed Luka to a max third contract. No doubt they couldn't wait to get that signature. But Trae still feels like he's on that level, and he's obviously not. But this is a harsh reality that is now settling in for him that he cannot accept. You have been in the NBA for 7 years, and sucks to say it, but the haters were right. People doubted Trae for years, but they finally accepted it in 2022. It was Hawks Heat first round of the playoffs, and in one of the pivotal games, Trae struggled big time against the Heat's defense. Picture this, Heat defenders swarming Trae, making it impossible for him to get a clean shot or find his rhythm. Every time he drives, Bam Adebayo or Jimmy is there to shut him down. You can just feel the frustration building when he turned the ball over or is forced into a tough shot. That series was a tough one for him on defense as usual, but offense, it exposed Trae as a deeply flawed star, one that you cannot win with as your number one player. Like, who was the last number one player like Trae to actually win it all? Steph Curry? No, he is so much more efficient than Trae and became a solid defender. Maybe Pistons Isaiah Thomas because he had a deep defensive team around him. That means you have to go all the way back to 1989, which is what the Hawks are afraid of. So it is smart to not max this guy. But history also says it can lead to a much bigger problem. Next year, Trae can opt out of his contract and become a free agent. Go anywhere with cap space. And Shams says NBA execs are closely watching and monitoring the future and status of Trae Young. So who could that be? Well, there is a realistic but shocking landing spot next offseason. But what the Hawks really want is for Trae to accept less money like Jalen Brunson. Jalen accepted a team-friendly deal from the Knicks, but if he waited a year, could have gotten $100 million more. $100 million discount. And with that, New York has been able to build a deeper, more well-rounded team around Brunson, who is kind of like Trae. terrible on defense, but a clutch big game score. The problem is Trae doesn't want to take a hometown discount. It would be admitting to himself and the entire NBA, yeah, I'm actually not that guy. If Trae did want to take that discount, this deal would already be done. But the real question is, if Atlanta doesn't think that he's worth it, does anyone else? Because it doesn't matter if Trae feels disrespected if he can't get that money somewhere else on the open market. So who's got cap space next year? Well, the rankings are the Wizards with over 70 million, then the Nets, Lakers, Jazz, Blazers, Hornets, Bulls, and Clippers. But none of the teams that need a point guard there offer Trae a real chance to win. What they do offer him, though, is leverage. Trae can tell the Hawks, you either pay me what I want, that max contract, or I will leave to the Wizards in free agency, which is why I completely expect leaks from Trae in this next year how, he likes what the Wizards are building, or that he's intrigued of playing in New York for the Nets, which is total BS. He doesn't like any of that stuff, but he needs that leverage, that threat to get paid by Atlanta. His other move here is to go somewhere in a trade. So here's a look at which teams might be interested in getting Trae Young. So the first team is the Miami Heat, who do not have a natural point guard on their roster. Trae would be an amazing fit next to Bam Adebayo, setting screens and catching lobs. And yes, there's some overlap with Tyler Hero, but Hero would have to be in this trade. I think Eric Spoelstra would be the best coach that Trae has ever played for, and did bring some of that alpha mentality that they have missed since Jimmy Butler left. But you'd expect Miami to want a star like Trae. What about the Minnesota Timberwolves? One position of need there is true point guard after aging Mike Conley leaves. The Wolves have a top 10 defense, which Trae needs, and his passing could unlock both Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert at the rim. You know how Ant's been complaining about too many double teams? Hello, Trae Young is the perfect solution, and one of their biggest problems has been half-court offense, which Trae excels at. Now, obviously, there is some potential friction because Ant also wants the ball a lot, but Minnie's new owners would get to make a big splash trade. But the shocking landing spot where no one expects is the Boston Celtics. And hear me out, because there is a real case for the Celtics to pursue Trae Young after moving on from Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. So Boston relies on ISO-heavy offense in crunch time, and they have lacked that elite playmaker for years. When things stall, they really need that pure creator who breaks down defenses and thrives in chaos. And Trae is one of the league's best at generating points out of thin air. Pick and roll master, deep shooting gravity, elite lob passing. But Trae is such a good fit because the Celtics are a top 4 defense. And I know people would be shocked at such a polarizing player like Trae landing with a franchise like Boston, but isn't it kind of perfect? A straight-laced organization to balance out the flashiness of Trae Young? Of course, none of these teams have a ton to trade, but the fact is that Trae could use that leverage of the cap space from like the Wizards. Say, actually, you know what? Trade me to the Celtics or the Wolves, but if you don't trade me, I'm going to leave for nothing in free agency. You can either take a small package from the Wolves or the Celtics, or I'll leave for nothing. Now, all of this could go away depending on how the season plays out in Atlanta. The Hawks had a chance to pivot young with guys like Zachary Shea, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, but instead they have loaded up for next year, acquiring Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kristaps Porzingis. So if the Hawks make another deep run, then maybe Trae does take that discount, but if not, anything can happen. So the Hawks think that they're buying themselves time here, but Trae might be buying himself an exit. Either way, this is the kind of standoff that doesn't just go away. So don't be surprised if next year we see Trae holding up a jersey and it ain't Atlanta. But Giannis is also making noise about leaving. The problem is nobody cares. This dude has flip-flopped so much on leaving Milwaukee, but he could be walking into a trap, because the longer that Giannis hesitates, the more this all starts to look like a career-killing mistake that we've actually seen before.